Today I'm going to show you how I made my solo drum IEM setup. I made this setup trying to make it as affordable as possible while trying to get decent sound quality from my drums and my music/metronome. So while it's not a redneck setup, it's not a professional one either. I'm making this video to try and show you the bare minimum of what it takes to get started using an average drum IEM setup for practice. This is also not a professionally produced video, so I recommend watching the video fully before making decisions or buying anything to gather all the tips and info to apply them properly, as they may not all apply in the same order they are presented. There also may be better methods, but as far as I can tell, that they either cost the same or more. So do more research after this video and try to look up other people's setups and see if the prices presented have fluctuated for or against your favor. With all that being said, let's get into what it takes to make an average IEM setup. You will need 1. The IEMs. IEMs are better earbuds that are designed to cut out outside noise. Since drums are loud, it's obviously good to have some hearing protection. For a long time I used my JBL headphones since they have good outside noise rejection and allow me to listen to my music while playing. But since they have good outside noise rejection, I can only barely hear my drums. The sound is so muffled, I only have a general idea of what I sound like while playing. You could also use musicians' earplugs, which lower the volume you perceive, but also try to keep the sound quality clear. But then how do you listen to your music? The way I see it, you would have to blare the music that you're playing to over the sound of your drums through some serious speakers. Not a super great solution, though it may feel cool pushing so much air around you. So we have IEMs, but IEMs are unfortunately only one piece of the puzzle. While we have the buds, we need to find a way for the sound to get into the buds, otherwise we can still hardly even hear our drums at all. Number 2, the mixer board. So we need to find something to plug our IEMs into that can receive all the sounds we need to get into the IEMs. Enters the classic mixing board. This is one of the earliest, easiest, and cheapest ways to sum up audio sources into one output source. You're going to want a mixer with at least 2 XLR inputs, though I recommend 4 or more for further expansion later down the line to get better clarity and control of your drums. Now most mixers only use XLR and 1/4 inputs, including for the headphone jack. So we move on to our next need. Number 3, adapters. I can't tell you exactly all the adapters you will need for your setup. Depending on if your setup is better or much more whacked out than mine, you may need more or fewer adapters than me. But here's what I needed. I needed a 1/4 male to 1/8 female jack adapter. I also needed a stereo RCA color cable male to stereo 1/8 male. And if you're using one of these awesome new age phones with no audio jack, then you will need an adapter for that, like I do. I recommend trying to find a different device somehow, because for some reason my Google Pixel 7, at least I think that's what the model of my phone is, its audio has basically crapped out. It still outputs audio, but basically at 1/4 of the volume. And that started only a couple months after upgrading my phone. Of course, your mileage may vary. Number 4, auxiliary extension cable. I recommend a 1/8 extension cable. You can consider this an adapter, but it's not really adapting, it's just extending. It's also not 100% necessary. If you can reach your board with your stock IEM wire or find another solution, then more power to you. This is just my experience and I needed one. Number 5, microphones. Now we need something to listen to the drums and relay those sounds to us. We need microphones. I recommend one that's more directional and another that has a wider pickup range. There are many options available, but often not for affordable pricing. However, there have been some changes to that statement in recent years. More on that later. Number 6, chords. In order to use microphones, we need a couple things. Let's start with the easier to swallow. Oddly, both figuratively and literally. Chords. We need as many XLR chords as we have microphones. Length depends on your situation. You can try to measure and estimate the length of the approximate position of the mic to the mixer input, but typically 15 to 20 feet is a good all-arounder. Now we have one of the hardest pills to swallow, stands. We again need as many stands as we have microphones, unless you plan on doing some real jank stuff like hanging microphones from places using XLR cables, but I don't recommend it. Stands can be expensive, but at the same time you can't go too cheap. If you go too cheap, fasteners might not work, things can get loose, and they could be the downfall of your microphones, especially if those two are on the affordable side. You could probably go with just about any stands except for very rigid and non-adjustable stands. Most of these types I've seen are typically made for vocals or spoken events, so typically try to go with adjustable boom stands. We'll talk more about this later. Number 8, end table. An optional 8th item is a small table of some sort depending on your situation. You need something to put your mixer on. You may have one already, which is why this is optional. If you don't, you can get one of these cheap plastic disassemblable shelf sets and use one or two of the segments. Alternatively, you can look on local second-hand sites like Facebook Marketplace or OfferUp. Depending on where you live, people may post listings of furniture that they don't want anymore for free. All you have to do is come pick it up. I live in the Tucson, Arizona area, which is the land of retirement and shifting opportunities. So people are always moving or dying. So these posts are somewhat frequent here, especially during the summer and autumn time along with the garage sale posts. Or you can just get creative and put it on the floor, on a big box, or something else at sitting level. So with what we need out of the way, let's talk about what I got personally. The in-ear monitors I got are KZ ZSN Pro X's in blue. These are $24 and were recommended by Rob Beatdown Brown in his video about budget in-ear monitors. I've been using these for a while now, and they're pretty decent. But these are my first ever IEMs that I've ever had, so I have no other references. I also recently got some memory foam ear tips for them because the stock ones that came with the in-ears started to go loose. Many people recommend these types of ear tips in their videos, but they really do work and help. There are many brands trying to make mixers, and there are a wide range of prices for essentially the same inputs and features. I highly advise cautiously shopping used for a mixer board. Behringer is a good brand to shop for used, though typically with more inputs, people start to not give you as good of a deal. If all else fails, you can go with the same option I went with, the K-Mize 6-channel audio mixer. Keep in mind, for some reason, some people and brands like to include direct inputs and some others in their specifications. This board actually only has 4 hybrid inputs that can use XLR or 1/4 cables plugged into them. The base price is $64, but is currently on sale for $56. I bought these instrument to auxiliary adapters. There are many like them, but these are the ones I chose. $5 for 2. They're good to have around when working with different audio equipment because you never really know when you're going to need them. I had this stereo RCA to auxiliary adapter already, but to buy one would be about $10. I also had the phone cable adapter, but to buy a couple of these would be at least $5. The auxiliary extension I also had around, but a new one would be at least $5 as well. Now, microphones have come a long way in the past 5 to 10 years. The all-time classic is the SM57. These normally run for about $100 each if bought new and name brand from Shure. But because of the amazing times we live in now, there are knockoff mics that can cost $20 or lower. I bought from different brands to try different things out. The GLS mic I bought is currently out of stock, but the Wamic WM57 is a whopping $16. There is also an alternative, the Pyle PD Mic 78 for $23. Though, like I said before, I recommend getting one of your mics with a wider pickup range. This is based on experience using both of my selected SM57-like mics in my setup. You may want to invest either now or later in a condenser microphone. These require phantom power to work, but are more powerful and pick up more sound in a wider range, at least in my experience. In our 2-microphone setup, I find it somewhat difficult to get full coverage of what's happening on the top of the kit using one of our simple SM57 microphones. But keep in mind that condensers require that power, which as far as I know, needs to be supplied through your mixer. I don't think there's any other way. Do your research and see if this is something you want to work towards or figure out before buying your mixer. Chords. This is another area where you have many options. I simply went with the Amazon Basics 10-foot XLR cables. I don't think they were $14 each when I bought them, but they are now at least. Now stands. I went with two different models of stands. The first is a normal boom arm stand by Ka-Ah-Ya. I hope I said that right. It says it's $40 normally, but it's currently on sale for $27, which is also the more likely price I paid for the stand. The next is a name brand stand, if you can believe it. The Samson MB1 Mini Boom Stand. As the name entails, it's still a boom stand, but sure. I got this to get better angles on the bass drum. And one of these stands can be yours as well for a whole $33. Now I spent a little less than this because of already owning some items and some other sales along the way, but our total is roughly about $230 for this setup. And that's crunching the numbers and being frugal. So, with that slightly disappointing number out of the way, let's get to the actual setup. So now we're out here buying my drum set, and this is going to be, not a professional recording. I don't have the greatest camcorder, and it doesn't have a wide angle, so it's going to be kind of hard to show everything. And on top of it all, I don't have a tripod that can really look over my drum set. Right now you're looking over my hi-hat and a small little trash splash that I have. Let me take you around and see what my area looks like. Like I said, this isn't a professional recording, so I forgot to set my white balance before, and so everything looked a lot more orange. Things look a lot more not orange recording now, but whatever. This is my kit. This is what I have to deal with. This is my space right here in this little corner of the garage. So ideally you want to do some planning before you do any buying. So, my situation is quite cut and dry because I don't have a whole lot to work with. So obviously the table is going to go right there. So now you just gotta decide where you're gonna put your mixer on your table, depending on what size it is. Dang it. You have to make sure that it's in a viable spot for it to be plugged in and unplugged. It's probably suggested that you try and get a mixer with a power button on it. This one, however, doesn't, so I'm stuck here unplugging it and replugging it until I can get like some sort of switch, hopefully for like the USB chargers or something like that. My plug is right here on an extension cable. I don't know how much you can see that. So this is a nice little mixer, as you can see, that doesn't take up a whole lot of space, so I have some space for other stuff if I need it. So the next thing that you would want to figure out is where you're going to put your microphone stands. Ideally you want to do this obviously before you buy them so you know what cords you can get, but you can also buy the stands and microphones first, set them up, and then buy cords after, but then that kind of prolongs the time that it'll take you to be able to start playing. So these are the stands that I have to work with. I was using this stand, it's really dark over here. I was using this stand, but I wanted to use what I bought for the video at least, and plus I think that this stand might work a little better for out here anyway. So these are my two stands. This one is going to go behind the kit because I want a microphone to pick up everything that's happening on top, and then this one is my little one to go by the kick drum. So when it comes to where you put it on the kick drum, I did have this set up, obviously. I think I said that before, but I've torn it down to show you and demonstrate setting it up. Originally, my kit was more pointed in that direction, but we slanted it more to try and have it take up a little less space, but it didn't really make a difference. However, what it does make a difference of is that the front of the kick drum is now farther away. However, I don't have a sound hole or port in my front, so when I tried putting it in front of the drum, it didn't really sound the greatest, but I also didn't have my actual good mixer. I was using a crappier one, I think. Either way, I can try setting it up in front again, but I also might not because I don't know if my 10-foot cord can reach around all the way around there. I might be able to finagle the cord to go through, between the kick drum and the floor tom, and then come around and then under the cymbal stand, but we'll see. Where I have been putting it, typically, let's just grab this, where I have been putting it is right in between here. So the purpose of this was to try and get more of the front end click of the beater hitting the drum. And additionally, it also helps with picking up some of the floor tom and somehow also the trash crash over here. It also probably helps with the ride a little, but I can't confirm that. So this is where my microphone I know reaches, and a way that you can measure it is if you take... So another way you can measure and try and estimate what kind of chord length you need is if you get a tape measure that is capable of measuring the length of your planned chord, which I have right here, a 10-foot tape measure. So, you know, it's perfect for my chords that I have, but if I needed extra length, I would be kind of crap out of luck. And so what's cool about the tape measure is that, you know, it's flexy. Another option, if for some reason you need a really long, you know, tape measure, is I think the yard measurers. I don't know what they're called, the yard spools. They're like tape measures, but they're for measuring much longer distances. That might also work for you, but I don't know for sure, and I don't know if it labels feet or just the yards, which is 3 feet. So, you know, that kind of helps. Either way, just a suggestion. So you take your tape measure and you start pulling it out. So we take it to the 10-foot mark and we lock it. So now we have our chord length. So you want to try and place, this is kind of a, you know, janky way of doing this, but you know, it kind of works. So you want to try and get one end of your thing to go close to the port where you need it to be. Try and make sure that you don't put the metal in there. It's possible that could mess something up. I don't think it really will. Just, you know, don't want to get in trouble for anything. So you try and put this near there, and you don't want to have a direct path to it, or at least not with the tape measure if you're not going to have it with the with your cable, because so you want to take into account the slack, which is why the tape measure is really good, because it also allows you to curve around things and put the slack in much like your cable would have, because that can add or subtract, usually not add, but you know, subtract distance off of your cable length. So I'm putting this around here to try and get one end over to where my microphone should be, and then try and hopefully get this end where I'm just going to try and hook it on one of my knobs. It's not going to work. It would be much easier if you had a assistant to help you with this. God, this just does not want to be helpful. When you're a lonely son of a gun like me, you have to make your own friends. Painter's tape or something like it. This cheap stuff that is easily removable and usually doesn't leave behind residue. We're gonna tape this son of a gun to my estimated area, and then we can remove it if we need to, or when we need to. So I want it to be about right there. Because it's meant to be easily removable, it's not gonna be the strongest thing. So now, from now on, you have to be kind of careful when trying to do your measurement and try not to yank on it and stuff. Now, of course, this isn't going to be a perfect model of your length, because right now I have it going over things. I need to have it probably feeding under. I'm going to do that, and then I'll see you over by the microphone side. Damn it. Another warning, which might be kind of hard to keep in mind in this if you're trying to do this type of measurement. You don't want to kink your tape measure, I believe. I'm not a craftsman of most anything, so I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure if you put kinks in your tape measure, it's going to start messing up the retraction and the unspooling. I think it'll just mess it up. And my tape also came undone. It would help if I gave myself a little more tape to work with, but here we are. Okay, so here's a rough estimate of where, you know, the cable should start. Keep in mind as well that the angle at which you have to plug things in can take off an inch or two without damaging, you know, unless you plan on damaging the cord. So just be careful of that. I don't know if they make L bracket cord plugins for XLRs. I know they do for guitar chords and instrument chords, but I'm not for sure about XLRs. I think that that's kind of a specialized thing. So we have our cable right, or quote unquote cable right here, and it's feeding. It's gonna be kind of hard to see through here. And let's go over to the microphone area. So it's looking like I'm gonna have a lot more distance than I thought actually, and I could probably make it around the did it just come undone? It did. But it's still in the area. So I have plenty of room to make it to my planned area, and even if I wanted to come around here, I'd probably have enough room. The only issue with that is that if I wanted to leave the microphone stand here, it would be kind of in the way because I share this space with my parents, because I can't move out anywhere that allows, a drum kit. So yeah, it's gonna be kind of in the path. But it is a small stand, and a small little side tangent is that this one has a very narrow base, which is good, but typically people think it's bad because, the stability. But it is heavy, it's weighted on purpose so that it will be stable. Just wanted to add that in. So now my next stand is going to be trying to capture everything that's happening up top with our 2 microphones set up. So we need something that is sitting in, the player's area, kind of acting as our actual ears. So obviously the first thing you have to do is set your stand up properly for, overhead kind of hybrid miking. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but yeah. Basically, you want this to be higher up, and you want it to be, if you can stretch it, not literally, but if you can get it in, farther back, depending on what microphone you have, of course. The farther back would be better, within reason, because you don't want it too far away, but as far back so that the cone can pick up everything that's happening up top. That would be really helpful for your sound. But depending on if you got like a phantom powered microphone, something a little more powerful with a little bit more pickup range, you could probably put it a little more closer. The only problem with that is if you don't have it in the middle, like I'm hopefully going to be able to do, you'll be picking up probably more of one side than the other, which can be an issue, can possibly not. On my kit, I have cymbals that are louder than others. For instance, from the player's perspective, my left side is really loud because I have my hi-hats and my 16-inch crash, but I also have my 14-inch trash splash, which is really quiet. On the other side, I have, it's also kind of loud, but I have my 18-inch crash and my 16-inch trash crash. And then I also have my 20-inch ride, but the ride comes out a lot quieter because I like to just ping on it, Yeah, so on each side I have these quiet cymbals that don't get picked up very much due to, mic placement. So here we have the microphone stand put in the upright position. It's so tall that you can't even see the top of it right now. So this is actually a really good option for trying to get kind of an overhead thing going. If you're trying to do actual overhead microphones, this might be a little short still, but you also might be able to get it to work. It also depends on how much space you have, because in my current little corner, I would need something that's much more upright and tall. If you had this in a larger studio, you might be able to make it work if you had it backed off a little bit and angled towards the cymbals, kind of downwards, but backed off. I really wish I had a taller tripod so I could try and back off the camera and show you this entire area here, and so you can get a better idea of what's happening, but unfortunately I just don't have that. I also don't have a wide-angle lens for the camera because it also doesn't take wide-angle lenses. I really thought it did. Unfortunately, this Canon Vixia works pretty good, but the only Vixias that take the screw-on lenses, I believe, are 600 series and above, which they're up to 800. I forgot what this one is. I think it's 400. Yeah, I have a 400. So let me try and back you off and see what you can see. Okay, so right now this microphone stand is right in the middle of my playing area, which even though it might be able to pick up some good tones, it's not going to be good for our playing. So we want this to be kind of behind us and out of our way. One of the best options for me right now is to set it right back here, because it can be put kind of in the center of the kit, and it can pick up majority of what's happening. At least I hope so. Another good option is to try and place it directly behind you and over your head, because then it gets a similar listening experience, compared to, if you were actually listening to your kit. And then another option, of course, is to put it over here, which is getting closer to the door, so then that would be kind of, it can get in the way, and it will be possibly favoring my hi-hat side of the kit rather than this side of the kit. So I am going, this is also something you can experiment with depending on your chord length. If you have enough chord length, you can experiment with mic positioning, which typically you want to get some extra chord length just for, comfortability of being able to have cable management and to, experiment, like I said. So there is the possibility that with this positioning, it may start to favor my ride side of the kit, but for now, this is where it's going to be. And obviously, in this position, compared to the board, it's not going to need a very long cable whatsoever, but like I said, 10 to 20 feet is a good general length for if you need to take out these chords and use them somewhere else, or if you use them for a different project. And so the rest of the project is really just hookups. After you figure out your lengths and positionings, the rest is pretty simple. First things first, 1/4 jack to 1/8 jack for headphones. Then we have headphone jack, 1/8 jack extender plugged into the headphones. And so now this is just another 1/8. So it's 1/8 male, 1/8 female, just extended. And then you have your buds. Whatever you're using, your IEMs. Oh my god, if I could get... That's one thing about these, that these things can get really tangled real easily because of these earpieces. So be careful of that. You plug these into your extender, and you're ready to listen. However, we don't have anything to listen to yet. So, we have, for my machine, we have these color cable, RC cable, I don't know exactly what they're called yet, RC cable to stereo 1/8. Make sure you plug the right color into the right thing. It will not break anything if you plug them into the wrong sides, but your panning will be incorrect, and left will be right, and right will be left. And then, depending on what device you're using, your phone adapter. Bam. These phone adapters, these flimsy little ones, this one's really crappy, and it keeps losing connection whenever I move my phone around. So yesterday I was doing some, or maybe a couple days ago, I was doing some practicing, looking up some tutorial videos, and it was repeatedly pausing my video and doing this weird noise that it makes when it connects and disconnects. So hopefully buy a higher quality one. I think the ones that I showed are actually higher quality, but for cheaper than this crap. Because I think this is like a name brand, maybe Samsung one, who knows. But yeah, either way, these little flexy rubber ones, maybe get one that's like braided and better looking. It might work better. So next we have cables. Or at least the real cables, I mean, for the serious equipment. So we have our two XLR 10 feet Amazon Basics ones. So obviously I don't have to worry about the length too awful much. However, it would be nice for you to be able to plug in your channels into what you can remember or what is optimal. What would be optimal is to plug in channel 1 to the kick drum, because it's over on this side, and the overhead is over here. However, this overhead, the very first one, has the plus 48 phantom power. So you would logically want to use that on the overhead. It also just helps me remember, because I think of this microphone first. So for logic's sake, I'm going to put channel 1 as my overhead. And even though you can't see it, what I did was I took and I routed the cable over to it and put the male XLR end into the microphone holder clip area. So now we try and route this one, which is going to be a little more difficult, simply just because we have to route through a few things. Okay, so we're going to go underneath the rod, underneath a cymbal stand. Try and get majority of the length over there. Well, I guess we don't need the length over there. It'd be better if it was over here anyway, for the sake of my space and who I share it with. Hopefully you could hear me. Okay, so let's grab one of our microphones just for the sake of it, because it's going to be a lot easier down here and just get it done. I don't remember which one I liked better. I think I was testing between the two microphones. They're very similar and they sound the same, but I think I got better, dynamic response sounds out of the GLS one, which unfortunately isn't available right now. So I used this one up top, or did I? I might have to try it again. Either way, you know, you can experiment with your microphones, because microphones do sometimes have, you know, slightly different sounds. When they're based on the same model, typically they're gonna sound pretty dang close, unless there's something seriously wrong with them. For the sake of ease of working in here, I'm going to use this shorter one because this one has a longer grill end, so I'm going to use this one up top. Now we're having issues with one of the tighteners, and I have been for a little bit on most of my things. There's these little star nuts that are meant to tighten one spot and then you gotta tighten another spot, and see, it still didn't even actually work. Is this tightening? There we go. So let's just turn this like this. Some of these microphone stands have been really difficult to work with. Not really difficult, but have been difficult to work with. So let's try and get this in the right position again, because we want it kind of in between the crack, at least I want it in between the crack of my floor tom and my bass drum, to try and get more of that front end, like I said. And then try and keep your cables out of the way, so that hopefully they won't get stepped on, damaged, even by anything. Hopefully. Try and keep them underneath things, so that if anything falls, typically it'll be blocked by stands and stuff. And we plug this in. These are simple passive mics, so you just plug in and go. And then, like I said before, I already routed this one up top because it's right next to the mixer, which is just right down there. So we stick this in the stand. Figure out where the prongs are on the XLR cable, and then it'll be good to experiment where exactly to point your microphone. And this is where a good stand comes in handy, because you want to make sure that all of your tighteners are in, you know, they're going to stay tight when you finally get it in a good place. Right now this is looking pretty good. It's facing pretty close to the dead center area between my two rack toms and my two crash cymbals. So it should be sitting right in the middle. I worry that the ride will not be picked up as much, but my two trash cymbals should be good, and my hi-hats should be loud enough to get picked up by basically anywhere. Another semi-pro tip that I have is that if you live in a dusty area and you're setting up in a space that if this is going to be susceptible to dust, I recommend covering up your mics when you're not going to use them. Right here I have a sheet that I use to cover the whole kit, but when I'm feeling lazy and don't want to cover the whole kit, I just cover up the mic, and then I take that one inside with me, since it's a lot easier to, you know, reset and readjust. It's not as finer of a sound as this one, because I'd like to keep that one the same, and that one, you know, it gets moved around a lot and experimented with, because while it does help with the sound, it's not a perfect sound, obviously. So now I've shown you kind of the basics of how to make a drum IEM setup to get your practice sounding from this to sounding like this. A little bit of loneliness, a little bit of disregard, handful of complaints. Now, my example is still not fully optimized because, like I said, my phone is a piece of garbage and can't output audio properly, so my volume levels are really difficult, especially for getting that direct into the computer. You know, my example here isn't perfect, but your circumstance can work out a lot better, and hopefully mine will as well in the future. So I just tried to play my drums with my headphones again just to make sure that I could compare them properly, but what I have now realized, I don't know if it's because my head shape has shifted or if my headphones, you know, the padding just isn't as good, but I couldn't even get a proper seal on my head with the headphones anymore. So it's another example of why it's better to get something like the in-ear monitors, because these have now shifted so that they don't even work properly as ear protection anymore. I was getting bass, it was only dulling the sound minorly from the drums. So now I was hearing them fully, but because I was hearing them fully, I was still going to be damaging my ears. That's just another example of why it's a good option to go this route and try and keep some ear tips for those in stock, because like I said before, I had the original ear tips were also getting worn out, so then I was having essentially the same issue because my ears would fall out and there would not be a proper seal on my ear canals. Yeah, just wanted to add that in before we close out. So if I didn't say it, if I cut it out before, I'm gonna say bye-bye.